was nearing the stage of first stage of enlightenment, so he tried to calm him down and said to Vishaka, why did your granddaughter tell your mom to speak to monk in this manner? Well, all the monks had children. So the young monk felt happy and became peaceful, that at least Buddha understood his point of view. And then Buddha told him this verse, it is no good that you should, in such a small thing, you should try to quarrel with a small girl. After listening to this verse, he became enlightened before the first stage of enlightenment. So even if you are upset, you can be near enlightenment. Don't worry. Uttithe
Nappamajje Dhamman Sucharitan Chare Dhammachari Sukham Teti Asmin Loke Paramahicha.
Uttithe Nappamajje Dhammam Sucharitam Chare Dhammachari Sukham Seti Asmin Loke Paramahicha. Next is also along with it, so you can read that. The two have same story.
Dhammam chare sucharitam nanam sucharitam chare. Dhammachari Dhammachari sukham seti asmin loke paramhi chare.
The second half is the same. Dhammam chare sucharitam nadam sucharitam chare Dhammachari sukham seti asmin loke paramahi. Beautiful, such a verse is made so nicely. Utthitte napamajje Dhammam sucharitam chare Dhammachari sukham seti asmin loke paramahi. Dhammachari sukham seti. जो धर्म का पालन करता है सुख से जीता है, सुख से सोता है, जीता है. अस्मिन लोके परमहिंच, इस लोक में भी और दूसरे लोक में भी. He lives happily. So therefore, what is he saying? Utthite napamajje, rise. Get up. Napamajje, don't be negligent. These are the words have been used in Upanishad also, which later on were used by Vivekananda. The famous statement is there: arise, awake, stop not till the goal is reached. One of the roots from there. Dhammam charite sucharitam nammam sucharitam chare. So it's just continuing with that, in that flow. Dhammachari sukham seti asmin loke. So practice the good teachings, not the ducharitam, not the wrong teachings, not the false and bad ones. Why? Because one who lives in Dhammachari, who abides in truth, he is happy in this world as well as in the next world. The story associated with it is a bit strange, might seem to be strange. It's that after Buddha attained enlightenment, after 1 year he came back to Kapilasthu. His father had sent him messages and he came back. So when he was coming back, father got all the foods prepared and he didn't know that he had to invite Buddha to come take food. So Buddha didn't go. He went around from house to house, took the alms, and so his father was very upset and said, what is this? You have been travelling in this city on golden palanquins and you are begging food from here. Shame on you and shame on me, why are you doing this? So Buddha realized that he should inform him that this is the tradition of the Buddhas. I am no longer a prince, I am not belonging to this tradition. So he tells him, and this is the right course for an enlightened one to do. He goes to places to beg for food, unless somebody invites him. So then the father was pacified and he realized that he didn't know the customs of this tradition. And then these two verses were told by the Buddha, so, to pacify his father. And he understood it.
यथा कुब्बुलकं पश्ये यथा पश्ये मरीचिकं एवं लोकं अवेक्षन्तं मृत्युराजा न पश्यति.
This is one of my favorite verses of this Dhammapada. यथा कुंडलकम पश्य, जैसे आप बुलबुले को देखते हैं, यथा पश्य मरीचिकम, जैसे आप मिराज को देखते हैं, मरीचिको मिराज को देखते हैं, एवं खंडम, look at this world in a similar manner. मत्युराजा न पश्यते, one who does that, the king of death, मत्युराजा, मृत्यु का राजा, उसको देखता नहीं, he can't catch hold of him. He will become free and light. So this is about a story, it's about a group of monks who had gone to a village forest to practice, and their minds could not be really stable, so they went back to Buddha for the instructions. And on the way, they saw a mirage, and the storm broke out, and then they saw that on the ground the rain was falling, it was making bubbles, and then they just reflected on that mirage and those bubbles. And so our life is also just like that, and just because of this deep reflection, they became fully enlightened. And then they told the matter to Buddha, and when he said they told it to Buddha, then he spoke of the verses.
So this can be misinterpreted very much from Marichika. Napastati, he becomes immortal.
So Machurajana Pasthiti means you will not see the death again. You will not be able to see him. You can transcend this world, cross this cycle of death and birth. He will become an arhat. So that is one of my favorite verses. I think it's good to remember few verses. There is one of them which you can remember. So let us start. Today it is my turn.
This one.
ठीक है.
So I'll move that section. I'll move that section.
So I'll just make continuity, put a few points from the last chapter. Was action from emptiness. These are the chapters where we try to transfer this basic philosophy into action, into day-to-day life of a householder. So what are the specific things he has said? He says that in that last chapter on action, he has said that we should be very careful about action, because it is that which is eventually going to integrate the awareness into our life. If it remains in a cerebral zone in the mind only, nothing is going to happen. So how do we do that? And I think a summary point would be, we should question the sense of self within every action. So if you do that, G is extra, so can't be. इसे आप लोग दिक्कत होता है. Within होना चाहिए था. Within goal. You should need to question the sense of self within every action. So whenever action is taken, if the sense of self arises, you should be aware of it. And if it doesn't arise, things are going on smoothly. Then a very important point which is made, which I think when I was doing the training of the teachers of Suprashna, we used to discuss it and actually do this exercise, what he is advising us not to do. When we gauge and check in our equanimity, we are already lost. Very subtle point. So there in the training process, we used to give a questionnaire and ask ourselves whether our equanimity has increased or decreased with years of practice. So in that domain of horizontal investigation, that is perfectly fine. But if you look at it deeply, from the sense of self, you can see when I question whether I am equanimous, I actually got lost in the I. So the I, which is measuring, cannot exist, coexist with equanimity. And the very important point in therefore says, we can never know true equanimity. Why? Because things which are really authentic, there is no knower of them. They are there, just there. It's a very subtle point, and I think we need to be mindful of it in our pursuit and in our assessment of our progress in meditation. You can get easily carried away.
But that's a little, so the issue with checking in on equanimity, is it not the same as mindfulness? In this moment, where am I?
We'll come to that also. We'll question this whole issue of mindfulness. Because we are moving in a different domain, in the domain of overcoming the self-view. Panchupadana, we're trying to grapple with it for so many months, and we are trying to put the consciousness in a deeper way. So I think we'll see that. So can you please move?
Yes.
The next chapter is awakening through livelihood, stress and time. So, except me, all of you have livelihood. I don't know that she also has a livelihood. So it is important. So Rajesh should not have overlooked it. He asked me to do it. Who should have been doing it?
He was busy with his livelihood, so
So we have tried to put a title for it, which is in a way essence of the whole thing. That the effort should be to make our spiritual progress aligned with our thinking and understanding. We should step out of living which is self-empowered. Self meaning which tries to strengthen the notion of self, notion of mind, and finding our true home. True home being in the pure consciousness or in the wordless, into something which you can't really describe, which is you can say, pure awareness, being together, understanding that, being the true home. This word actually, Ajahn Chah also uses our true home. There is a talk he is given to a person who is dying. He goes there and gives him a talk and doesn't console him in the usual way which we do. Tells him that you are dying, go to a true home. Don't leave aside all the attachments to your family and children and grandchildren. It's a very beautiful lecture. It's available on that you can see that. What he is trying to point out is that the best way to do this, stepping out of self-empowering living, is to surrender our actions to silence. So I think pointed out in the earlier chapter also. So all the actions, whether they are verbal or physical, which emerge from such silence, they are spontaneous, they are heart-driven and connected. So there you are no longer driven by mind alone, by your intellect alone. You are driven through the heart, you are driven through the silence. So Hartford also points out the importance of it. He has written a whole book on it, stillness. And he points out the role of serendipity. Things happen on their own. And you would wish something and that will happen. Things will fall in place. What we usually call as coincidences. Things, when you are operating from a pure heart, then you will find strange things happening which you wouldn't anticipate. He gives example. I think many of us must have felt that experience. You are thinking about somebody and you want to talk to him, and you get a phone call from him without even any ostensible reason. Then he points out another, this point of our usual living in a deterministic manner, completely planned, structured living. So it becomes a real bore. Using those words, which is another word. It saps all enthusiasm for life, because everything is predictable. Get up here, do this, do that, do this, do this. Everything is laid out for you. So the living a life in a predetermined script may be good for a beginning, and then soon enthusiasm of the life is gone. There's no wonder left, there's no mystery left, everything is predetermined. Anything which does not fall in predetermined script, then we get upset. Then stress and other things begin to arise. So what he suggests is that early morning when we get up, we make a formal intention. May my consciousness be open, and may the mystery reveal itself throughout the day, so that we don't get worried about things which can happen anytime.
There's a question from Prabhakar. Yes, when he said, don't react to sensory objects outside, but the sensations resulted in the body. This is fine for tactile objects. How to understand this when visual or auditory objects are involved?
So we can practice it. In fact, the practice, if you read even Sayaji Working Journal, there's a talk by Sayaji Working given, where he points out that you can practice impression at all the 6 sense doors. You can practice at visual door, at auditory door, at olfactory door, at smell, everything. But just those events are not continuously happening, and therefore this tradition has chosen the tactile, what is called Kaya Sanphassaja Vedana, because this you can practice in a very structured and a regular manner. When you are walking, going for morning walk, and you see something, you like or dislike it. Immediately feeling arises, I like or dislike it. So you become aware of it. You taste some food, immediately feeling arises, like it, dislike it. So you can see like, dislike arising, taste, smell, touch, thought. So you can be aware of that, like, dislike. The important point about body sensations is that this like, dislike eventually affects the body sensation also. So if you are aware of that, they say it is indirectly being aware. But why not be directly aware? You can be directly aware also. So that can also be practiced. There are traditions which especially advise us to see about sound, because fortunately or unfortunately, sounds are always present now in the society. We are not living in where there is real silence. So even if you practice, sit quietly and say, let me listen to the sound, you can see all kinds of sounds. And if you happen to have hear the sound of so-called sound of silence, then you're always, so you can practice in that manner also. And gain all the kind of steps of practice as is there in the observation through the body.
This is one point about surrendering our actions to silence and wait. This requires huge amount of faith. Because surrender itself means faith.
No doubt.
And faith in the, for example, the early stages that we are in, the faith would come from that things will happen fine. Things which are coming from, spontaneously coming from silence, would be fine, but they would be, in a sense, a background belief is that they will be good for me. And if they don't appear to be good, then you start to say, अगर मैं खुद एक्ट करता तो शायद
because the sense of self is there. No? So as long as sense of self is there, there will be a kind of a tension, there will be an inner turmoil to that extent, to the extent to which it is there. So you have to see through it slowly and slowly and slowly. That's why, as you'll see later, he points out this as a structured way. He points out, Rodney also points out that this is the evolution from one stage to the next. They're not seen as contradictory. The method of structured meditation and the method of surrender are seen as evolution, one to stage to another. Okay. So let's move forward. Then it comes to the actual issue of wise livelihood. Because if you might be aware, when Buddha was asked about Samma Ajivo, what was his response? A person gives up false livelihood. That is what is called right livelihood. So obviously it didn't struck, so then he specified as what are undesirable livelihoods. 4 or 5 are identified. Dealing with poison, dealing with armaments, dealing with slaves, dealing with animals who are going to be butchered for butchery. And so these are the kind of tasks which he said. And if you see the overall perspective of any job which I do, which the result of which will be that other people will break their Shila, moral precepts. Somebody will take a gun, he cannot use to help anybody, he can use only to kill people. Or similarly poison, or trading animals, or having slaves. So they are all things which result in breakage of the Shila. So that's the general. He didn't say anything about other general prescriptions about this. What Rodney is saying is that we can put it in the words in different words, that we are pursuing our fundamental interest, what it terms as the primary intention, which is deepening our interconnectedness, which means indirectly reducing our self-centeredness. Once we see interconnectedness, our self-centeredness is naturally bound to get reduced. And while meeting our financial obligations. So it's put it this way, he is defined as the wise man. We can reflect on that and see whether it makes sense. But he also makes very interesting statements. I think which are usually may sound strange from a person with that clarity. He says, don't take a job which is motivated by idealism. Do a job which is motivated by your interests. Why? Because what you do by interest, you will be able to use your primary intention there. Because that job, interest in the job itself will ensure that self does not arise again and again. This is an important point. I think very important.
So also idealism means you set up something
Which is going to happen in future.
future.
You will always be chasing
what
something.
is and what can be.
You will always be chasing something and never be satisfied with it.
This is a question for Prashant. In the practical aspect, surrendering to roles kind of helps in surrendering to the action and reality. Roles being role of a dad, an employee, husband, son, etc. Do you relate to that experience?
See, as long as the roles are not taken personally, it's perfectly fine. The trouble arises when you take them personally and then you begin to have a dad, yes, you can but so many Ativa. Then the problem begins to happen. Obviously we play so many roles. We play them. We seamlessly play them without thinking I am doing that or no, I'm not doing it. It comes out of the kind of emptiness, the word which we had used in our earlier, Rajesh had used in the chapter 9 or 8. So what he is pointing out is that wise livelihood is how we are on the job, not the form of work. What is our attitude toward the job, with what motivation we are doing it, with what kind of outlook we are taking, all that comes from the job. Because in any job you are going to have stress, as we will see in the next slide. So therefore it is when the primary intention rises to the surface of the work, then nothing is discounted. Everything is falls in place. Because the primary intention is important. Primary intention being seeing through the illusion of self. Or you can put it seeing interconnectedness. The secondary intention is money, wealth, power and this. Now if secondary intention is dominant, is the really primary, then you are in trouble. Because then there will be all kinds of difficulties. So this difference between primary and secondary is this, I think you must have taken it from the talk by Eckhart Tolle. It is exactly a talk on this huge talk
On primary?
on the what is the purpose of life. The talk was this. And he starts with something and then suddenly this is, so finally we have come to the talk. So what is the purpose? He says, what is the purpose of all of you sitting here? He says, the primary purpose is to sit here. What is this purpose? To accept the reality it is and be at peace with the reality. And he says, what are the secondary? That is we'll talk about it later. So he just mentions that those are all secondary things. So the primary purpose of life itself is to live. To live in harmony with the life. To live in harmony with what is. To live in harmony with present moment. That is the primary purpose. Everything else is secondary. And if anything does to divert us from it, revert back again and again and again. So if the mind goes out and we get upset, we observe, this is not your primary purpose. Bring it back. So we abide in a sense of peace and harmony. So that is what is meant by the primary intention being the clear. What is the primary intention?
So this is available on YouTube.
I have the CD, I don't know, it must be available on YouTube also. Purpose of life. At least some extracts must be there. What is the purpose of life? I have got a CD. In India there is that, in Bombay, what is it called? Yogi Impressions. make sense VCDs and VCDs of thought. So when we come to the next slide, he's pointed out the issue of conflict in the work, and he points out that there can be conflict between your personal values and the values at work. If that is true, then it advises in the long run is better to leave. But in the short run, you can use that also as a keeping your primary intention intact. You can use that also as a method of aligning with your spiritual values. But in the long run, he says you should have patience in changing the job. That's I'm just extracted from the book some sentences. So you should have established an intention towards work that is aligned with your spiritual values and patiently think of changing the job. Another important statement he makes is whatever you have taken up, you should do it with complete integrity. Being complete in what we are doing is integrity. No employment is worth sacrificing our integrity. The words he uses. That if you have taken up a job, you do it with full responsibility. You can't do it half-heartedly. That is not going to help in your spiritual progress. It's going to create a big impediment. Because you'll always feel internally not at peace. And once our primary intention is clear, then the strive and stress on job helps in our future work, because primary intention is to see what is arising and come to terms with it. So you can use stress as a reverse cue and do the exploration. Why is this arising? What elsewhere we had talked about the first noble truth. So you can see, stress is arising. I am experiencing first noble truth. Explore it, investigate it, and the stress becomes a method of your spiritual development rather than becoming a big problem. Of course, if key thing is primary intention should be that. Then he points out the important issue of compartmentalizing time. Time for work, time for exercise, time for family, time for children, time for entertainment, all the things we have made compartments into it. And he points out the difficulty really of this compartmentalization and why this creates a problem. This is one of the major reasons for stress. There's a ghazal which I used to listen and sometimes listen. I don't know where it seems to have gone out from my collection somewhere. So I remembered it, so I put it there. It starts like this. जिंदगी से बड़ी सजा ही नहीं और क्या जुर्म है पता ही नहीं. The starting words. And then one of these lines is कितने हिस्सों में बट गया हूँ मैं, मेरे हिस्से में कुछ बचा ही. Very powerful statement. If you think about it deeply, you realize that you seem to have really lost time for ourselves, while actually the whole time should be for myself. And this we realized, of course, very deeply when working night. You just don't get any time to squeeze out time for yourself. If you really, and because you keep on saying yes to so many things out of certain non-primary intentions. So what he's pointing out is that the time management is one of the fundamental things which we are taught in management exercises. But really, there is no need for time management if you convert all the time into my time by having primary intention at the forefront. Everything is then my time. It doesn't matter. So the basic intention is arising because you want to seal off these times, compartmentalize. 5 o'clock I should leave job. 5:30 tension. At 6 o'clock I should reach home. Half an hour in traffic jam, tension. So then there is no way that we can really be in peace. So what is therefore suggesting, I put in next slide, is make all time your time. There is no issue. So it is a time to perceive unified reality, time to perceive that there is no person who is suffering from lack of time. If you do it that way, then the stress will automatically be relieved. And then you make some wise statements. Why is it that the time is becoming a problem? I mean, even if there is compartmentalization, why is it becoming a problem? It is becoming a problem because we are not waiting for, we are always waiting for something to end. ये काम अभी इतनी देर में खत्म हो जाना चाहिए, खत्म नहीं हो सकता. So you have a certain prescribed, predetermined objective which you want to fix in predetermined time, which is impossible.
There are external factors also.
Yeah, there are. So we can always interact.
Go late. If we finish our work and not worry about going back home, then we could, trouble our marital life.
That's what he's pointing out. If you are not waiting for something to end or trying to prolong it, you become alive. You're not waiting for something to end. Okay? Obviously, you have to plan your work properly, not take impossible deadlines, think that there are 26 hours in a day. So obviously, we should plan properly. And once you have planned, there's no need to, because I've seen, when we have big projects doing, for example, I'm writing a book. 5 years has happened. So many things happened in between. I had to give up. And sometimes I used to get tense. ऐसा हो रहा है, 5 साल हो गए, शादी में लिख दिया. So you have to plan, okay, जितना काम हो गया. आज इतना क्वेश्चन हो गया. आज 2 लाइन पेज लिखेंगे, कोई बात नहीं. उसका कल को 8 लिखे जाएंगे. Doesn't matter. You don't have a fixed agenda. You have long-term clarity, no doubt about it. But you can plan, you can have a flexibility. And then you no longer divide life into separate existences. Then there is a seamless transition from one role, like that, from one role to another. There is a seamless transition.
And when you reach home late, then you will experience personal better.
What he is pointing out is a very important thing. When there is complete abiding within, nothing will happen to us. Because there is no I who is suffering. So whatever be the input which is coming from whatever side, you can always see the importance of primary intention being alive. If primary intention is kept alive, then everything will be manageable. Use that word. If primary intention is not there, and secondary intention, even if it is noble, घर में harmony रहनी चाहिए, people should, I should respect my parents, I should look after my children. There are noble things. But if they are not, if they become primary, you will get into trouble.
The primary intention is to be normal.
To be in harmony with what is good, what is not. Which means not being there, not being the dominant factor in my interactions. You remember what was the first thing I said? Stepping out of self-empowering living. Self-empowering meaning? The self meaning atta, myself, my self-centered living in it. We use the word empowering meaning activities which strengthen the emotion of self again and again.
So there is a very interesting paradox that while he is suggesting that we don't live in a self-empowering way, he is saying make time for yourself, which is very different.
He's making make every
time for yourself, but not that time will not empower yourself.
Yeah. It is that sense is different.
Yes, I know.
It means he's using it in the usual sense of the term. That why can't every time be my own time rather than this is time for family, this is time for X, this is time for Y. So it is the way we are.
So that's almost sort of contrary to how C.R. Devakin sort of explains it. That we discussed it the time before last also, right?
Drawing attention to that.
Okay, one doesn't need to invoke anicca all the time. That's his very specific sentence that he says. And in fact, in one of his 7th or 8th grade discourses, Goenka also brings this up. कि जब आप काम कर रहे हैं तो काम करें.
Here also same thing is said. When you work, let I not arise. When you are engaged in the work, totally. When I arises, then you are not working. You are actually ruminating, reflecting, apprehensive, expecting a good appraisal or apprehensive that may be bad, expecting that I should get a raise or expecting that I should get at least a praise if not a raise. So then you are not working at that moment. So he's talking of those things. Those time and stress arise from those things.
And yet in that moment, if you abide with anicca,
You abide with none, there's no one who is suffering. You see, as he points out, abiding by has to be natural from the understanding of emptiness. Abiding in anicca with a view to overcome suffering is not true anicca.
actually when you are told,
When you are doing an effort to be mindful, you are not really mindful. That's what will come in the next step.
And more importantly, when you are doing an effort to be mindful to get rid of your suffering
Then you are strengthening yourself more and more. Self is getting strengthened. It's such a subtle thing, you have to see through it. It's a very subtle thing.
just anicca is actually self-empowered. When there is anatta, there is no anicca. There has to be anicca, there can't be anything else.
Anatta cannot be there without foundation of anicca, it is obvious. But if anicca is used as a tool, then you are in trouble. If it is an understanding, it is abiding understanding. You don't have to remember things. What you understand, you don't remember. You know for sure. I know for sure कि PowerPoint में उंगली डालूंगा तो जलूंगा. मुझे याद करने की जरूरत नहीं, मालूम है भाई मुझे. उसमें मैं बिल्कुल नहीं करने वाला. मैं उसमें हाथ नहीं डालूंगा.
Last week itself in our Friday session, we have a Friday session every Friday. We were listening to one talk by Osho, and he actually pointed out very nicely that there is something called curiosity, conceptualizations, and all that thing, and there is something called thirst. Thirst is something that you feel. If you can think about water, you can think about so many other things. That is very different than feeling the thirst. So I think if we make anicca a thought and we try to think about it, try to use it as a tool, and
It helps, definitely. But
abiding in it is very different than thinking about it.
So then it comes to the more striking things. The assumption that we need more time to complete our spiritual journey creates a sense that we are separate from God. So what is he trying to say? That in the paradigm in which we work on the mind to improve the state of the mind, to purify the mind, he is questioning that. He is saying, what if we stop doing anything at all for our state of mind? See, this has been the standard Advaita position. And he is trying to relate it to the teachings of the Buddha, and it gets directly related there. Panchupadana Khandati. So the mind, state of the mind is also, if you take it personally, it is a personality. He says, the feeling that there is something wrong with the mind is just a feeling, okay. Be done with it, see it and let it be there. But this
Interestingly, we start from there.
But this, obviously, is a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
That's why the Buddha was careful in suggesting cultivate certain qualities to bring the mind into a reasonable sense of because you can always do a mock of this. This statement can easily become a near enemy. You can just not worry, you can just don't bother about it. You're killing a person, I didn't do it. It just happened.
Sir, if we are, I realize that if we are aware that is this a thought or I am actually imbibing that.
If it is really aware, then this will not happen.
Right.
But we are, to be able to distinguish impulse, impulsive reaction from aware action needs training of the mind. Without acting or acting. किसी सामान्य व्यक्ति को कहो तो कहते हैं एक्ट करो, बोलो नहीं एक्ट करो, तुम गाली दो तो चाटा पड़ेगा ही, तुमसे एक्शन मानो से रिएक्शन मानो, it doesn't matter. So you can't figure out.
Sheila perhaps
You know that? Yeah, they are methods of protecting us. In fact, Shila is seen as a method by which we protect ourselves. Buddha's discourse is there. They are methods of protecting us and protecting the world from us. So what he's pointing out is that this desire that we want things controlled, that is how the time is entering into our life. Otherwise this notion of time is not existing.
There is a very interesting book on Indian mythology by an Italian person called Roberto Calasso.
Roberto?
Calasso. It's a book called Ka, K-E-K. And he explains sort of philosophical truths using mythological stories. So there is, in one part, he talks about a sentence which says, time, the way he says it, time did not exist. And then time is basically the gap between intention and action. If there is no gap between intention and action, there is no time. The whole notion of time comes into place because you intend and then it's not true. And then you have to act, as in do something in order for that intention to be true, which is how you define time, rather than saying you act in time. I mean, it's sort of reverse. I don't know, I'm not trying to, but it's very similar to inserts time into our life. Yeah.
The notion of time is very well explained by Eckhart Tolle, very, very deeply his point out, very, very deeply. And I think all this is based on his insights that he has tried to put them in the new format, in the format of teaching of the Buddha, with his own awareness and understanding. So what he is pointing out is that the awakening really means freeing awareness from self-control. It's obvious. Self-control means my control. So if you let the awareness operate without I into it, it will be sleep. That is the meaning of the awakening. So you can see how livelihood, time and stress are related to each other. How we
The
should
last
practice.
thing is very powerful. That is the
So this is what you were talking about, mindfulness.
Yeah, that we can see in the next chapter. We can quickly go to that also. So what is there for trying is that awareness, how do you free awareness from self-control? So the next is seeing our empty nature is one thing and realizing and abiding is another. It's a very important statement you can see coming from here. That you can understand it intellectually, but to be able to live it. And there where he points out this about this issue of two schools of Buddhism. One which believed in a structured evolution, other which believed in sudden enlightenment. The Zen tradition which believes in sudden enlightenment, and the traditional Theravada which believe in evolution. He gives a beautiful story about it in this. I will just put those two verses. About a fifth Zen patriarch. So he is getting old and he wants to appoint a heir, because they have the tradition of appointing the heir. So he asks all his disciples to write down in few words whatever they have understood from him. So one of them, who is a very renowned and a very well-known scholar, he writes down this statement given on the left side, that is, the body is a Bodhi tree, the mind is mirror bright. This is translation of this. At all times we strive to polish it and let no dust arise. He's talking about being constantly mindful and trying to purify the mind all the time. While the other one is a bit of a who's in fact most of the time working as a cook. This is something mentioned. This is what he says. Body is no Bodhi tree, nor mind a mirror bright. Since all is inherently empty, where can dust alight? So he says these are the two different paradigms. And he says that we should not see them as being opposed to each other. They are actually, we should treat them as evolution of understanding. From one level you are evolving to another. So it's like a child growing. You can't say that a child becoming an adult. A child is a lesser person and an adult is a bigger person. It's a matter of evolution, it's a matter of understanding. The adult cannot look down upon a child. How can a child see that the adult is totally different and gone crazy? that he doesn't play with my toys. So I'm crazy. So that's the way Krishna described. So when he talks of how do we really do this, he says, how do we, most of the time doing, not being. So Ajahn Sumedho also points it out. We are supposed to be human beings. And even John Kabat-Zinn points out in his talks on mindfulness that we are supposed to be human beings, Homo sapiens. But we seem to be human doings rather than beings. We've never been. We're never at peace. So that's what he's pointing out. Doing less and being more. Then he gives certain advice in this.
Here doing is not maybe
Doing
you're
is
doing, it's the
self-empowerment.
self-empowerment.
Where I am doing. Doer is there. Doership is there.
Doership.
Doing is where there is doership.
The action may still be happening, but you need
When you are being, you are doing action.
Right.
What does being more mean? Being means abiding in the worldless, abiding in pure consciousness, the self not being there. Sitting, for example, when you meditate and sit at peace and not do anything, you are at peace. When you are seeing, understanding whatever is happening to you, your individual self-motivated actions are not there. Self is not involved in action. Whatever emerges, you do. Whatever awareness arises, you act according to that.
And so just to maybe add to that, my belief is that when you are, for example, into a self-empowered action or you're thinking something, then you are actually somewhere else. You're not being what you are. You have gone away. You have flown off in your thoughts. You're not being.
I'll give a very banal example. I remember when I was a student, doing PhD, I had to do huge amount of coding. There's nothing available. And I would spend hours and hours and hours. I would never know how big a time. I would complain in a tiny bit. 6 घंटे निकल गए. Because there's no notion of somebody doing it. You तो करना ही है ना. So just, and I used to feel a kind of joy, in the beginning doing it. Because computer कभी आया था, लोगों को मालूम भी नहीं था. 70s में दिल्ली में पहला computer कभी आया. So we used to feel so joy and work into, and now when you do that mechanically for years and years, then you become fed up. Because you then start disliking it, or you get a perception that it is a lower work and something is a higher work. All these kind of things are thrown in your mind, and then coding is seen as something not worth to be done by an intelligent person. Anybody can do it. So these are all the result of all these thought processes which have transformed our thinking. I remember I never felt that it was something unworthy to be doing. I thought there was nothing else. Who will do it? Right? मेरी PhD मुझे करना है. There is nothing available. So it is something new I am doing. So when you are doing an activity deeply engrossed, without any notion of I am the doer, then actions are happening. You have an ability, and that ability is manifesting into action. But the moment questions begin to arise, self arises, I am not as good as him. I am the most wonderful person. I am doing the best, and yet these people don't understand. So these kind of self begins to arise in different ways. And then the efficiency is drastically reduced of work, and the suffering begins to arise.
So in that sense, the study is a little tricky, because I could equally effectively think of calling it doing more and being less.
Well, it is doing in the sense of doership. It is doership.
That's why I initially mentioned
Yeah.
this doing is not
Yeah,
what is happening out of your mind-body system. It's the amount of doership you are investing in.
Because when we say doing, I am doing. Doing by itself has no meaning. There is always a subject associated with doing. In English language, you can't say doing, I am doing, or he is doing. So there is always that subject. So that's why he has used this word doing less.
It's possible to be doing more in
Yes.
a body-mind sense
And being
yet-
more. And being more.
Right,
Yes.
right.
So what he is pointing out is the belief that I am in here and the world is out there is a subjective truth. We experience it. And it is because of the millions of years of evolution which has got genetically coded in our human genes, but it's not an objective fact. So that's what is pointing
A
out.
lot of times you find out that the people whose sense of self is not, who are sort of enlightened or whatever you call it, the amount of work they have done in life is unbelievable. And it seems as if they took the eye out of whatever force was acting.
Because if the eye is present, work is drastically diminished. Efficiency is diminished. The ability of work is diminished. It's very within our experience.
In all the talk that we were listening, I think he said, everyone said that your sense of I actually is an obstruction
Yeah.
between what needs to be done out of you. Densify actually obstructs that.
If you have even in the tradition of devotion, the perception is the God is working through me. You are no longer there. Then the matter is a different. Then the nature of work is totally different than that I am working. So you can see that. You can see the example of many people who worked in that manner.
Then doing less and doing more. One example that I actually the lot is that, for example, when we do a lot, the doership is lot, and because the doership associates itself with suffering, and what happens is that in the daytime when we do a lot of doership, when we come back home, we want to just give up that, and we don't know how. Just be. Actually, we don't know how to be.
Right.
That's why we want to stop that doership. Somehow we want to stop that doership, and the only way we know is switch on the TV. Right? At that time, we are neither doing nor being. Neither we know what we are. We are completely lost in what we
want to escape from
We want to escape.
You want to escape
And
from
at that time, you're not doing also, because you're not acting. You're just being driven by the images that are coming in. At that time, we're not neither doing nor being.
And you can see that if they are working, I remember my own experience of so many years. When I am working very intensely at office, I come back home fresh. I don't get tired at all. And when there is friction at office, then you come back home and say, "Kaha is there?"
And that is why this whole activity like TV or other such distractions or movie watch, they are completely passive experiences.
Yes, absolutely
You
passive.
just want things to come back. So,
And that's one of the things that
Unless you see a movie like Groundhog Day, you get fed up with it. क्या दिखा रहे हैं? क्या कर रहा है हमारा? If you telling me something, then मेरा खराब होने लगता है उसको देख के.
I saw the Samsara one. It was awesome.
You see that? मैं पागल हो गया है क्या? What are you showing? You realize it's showing my life actually. Repeating same thing again and again and again and again and again. And suffering same way again and again and again. Good.
And I remember this quote from Ajahn Chah. He said that the meditation has to be a holiday of the heart.
Yeah.
I think that was
very beautiful.
very beautifully put.
Yeah.
If the meditation, and I think if the meditation is the holiday of the heart, then the whole day is also holiday of the heart. Then you will not come back from the day being tense and stressed. It will become like any.
I very vividly remember the initial parts of my career when I used to teach. Students used to ask questions and very tough teaching, and I used to like it so much. And as days passed by, 20 years, 30 years, the students would not ask any questions. You can teach anything you like and get away with it. तो ये क्या है यार इसमें? पूछते भी नहीं है. और अगर आप मैंने कहीं से सुना कि आप गलत भी पढ़ा दीजिए, उनको पता नहीं चलेगा. Funny thing. Then you get tired after 1 hour you're tired.
तो राजेश कौन से वाले पेज में थे?
हमको पता है.
स्टूडेंट थे, सर को कहाँ याद है?
उनको पता नहीं होगा ना. Which year it was? I don't remember.
96.
96.
अच्छा, I thought you were all no.
96. So it was the beginning of the decline phase.
But I then passed out at 96. So most of the courses I did from you were
It began with
95. Air conditioning I did
There has
from
been
you.
a drastic change. in the last 2005, 6, 7, 8, I found. Then suddenly there was some improvement, 1 or 2 years, because of, I think, with all this issue about reservation, I found that this section of students who came from the OBC bias, they were really wanting to learn.
They were interested.
They were interested in learning. Some of them at least. अब तो बीच में तो 2000 के बाद तो ऐसी 2005 की ऐसी स्थिति हो गई थी कि people are just not interested in. One of the students even came to me, sir, अब इतना मेहनत करके जा रहा हूँ, just नहीं है क्यों? And he was one of the top students of the class. इसमें जाना है, नहीं ये जो होती है ना, जॉब की क्या होती है? जॉब आ रही है, आप क्या अफोर्ड कर रहे हैं? It's all right. So you can see the changes which happen. And then, you know, when you take that personally, then you get hurt. Then you feel sad. फिर लगता है क्या किस तरह जॉब कर रहे हैं? Then you have to kind of motivate yourself to teach better and do something. Begin to go. So the issue of I arising with interaction of the world is so subtle. It can arise in a variety of ways.
So in this situation that you spoke of your students saying that it's a medical, then he's demotivated, natural. So when we talk about interconnectedness, as what we say, so is that what it means that that interconnectedness?
It affects us. It affects us, no? So then we have to see how do we, either I get affected by them or they get affected by me. It depends on what level I can raise my awareness and whether I can really see each other.
Redefine your connectedness.
Because we tend to lose it every now and then. We tend to lose it because we see I am here and he is there. He is separate from me. So whenever you feel the students there and you see, I feel that they are like my children. There is no issue. I know they can behave in any way they like, and one can take it into cognizance in a proper manner.
It's a very active change of collectiveness.
Yes, of course. That's it. It's extremely active action. Yeah. And the connectedness can change. You know, one is aware of the nature of change. As the children grow, as you grow, the nature of relationships change, and we have to be aware of them and accept them for what they are. The biggest problem happens that we are not able to accept the changes which happen in our interrelationships, the passage of time. With my growing old, health falling down, children growing old, getting married, having their own family, the relationships are bound to change. Not able to adjust to them. And then there is conflict and stress. So when he talks about this doing less and being more, then he points out what is the importance of mindfulness practice. Because then this belief, the subjective belief is so strong, how will you get out of it? Only through mindfulness practice. So you practice it and slowly you see what is the objective fact and what is the subjective fact. You see both of them together and then you try to get over the strong impact of subjectivity. But he says even during this process the watcher will always remain, and that is the very last thing which remains in our mindfulness practice. And then he points out in words through wisdom that the fact that awareness can be objective observer of the mind itself means that it is not a mental process. It is something universal. It does not originate from the mind. It is not yours. It has come from. It is a natural gift given to you so that you can be aware of what is happening in your mind. And that is the anchor which he wants us to hold on to. Because if that anchor is strong, then you cannot get overwhelmed by whatever is happening in the mind. You are sitting at peace and you see in the ocean of mind bubbles arising, anger arising, this arising, and then arising and passing away. Then you are not perturbed by them. If you can be anchored in this. Let's see that. How many more are there?
Beyond 13, there were 18.
So then we'll stop. So I have to prepare tea.
So I will not take it because I get the test the empty stomach.
So we'll stop there. So we'll do a stop here at this chapter. We'll take it up next time.
Any questions?
If there are
Any questions on connect?
any questions from all of you or anybody else? Questions coming from the chat. Any question?
Sudhakar is typing something.
You have this.
क्योंकि वो पुराने तो मैंने पढ़ लिए थे.
So I was just thinking about this whole issue of don't try to be equanimous because there is an inherent paradox in it. So you can't do it, right? It's almost like asking someone to be spontaneous. I mean, either you are spontaneous or you are not. You can't become spontaneous. So how does then one eventually ever become equanimous?
Well, that's why the issue, this chapter is very important from that perspective. Need for practice of mindfulness. So when the mindfulness practice is there, then only one can be really aware and see through the emptiness of the whatever arises. What he is pointing out is that even the state of the mind is empty. It doesn't have any substantiality. But we give it substantiality because we grab hold of it. And if I am angry, then I grab hold of the anger. And then give it substantialness. To be able to see through it, we need a practice. So that is a paradox inherent in the whole thing. So that he himself is pointing out the importance of mindfulness practice so that you can eventually become naturally mindful. That is the point. First you practice it and then you become naturally mindful. So just as you practice riding a bike, and then we don't have to bother about it. It becomes a natural dexterity which you will gain. Driving initially, how much afraid we are, it's going to lag jayega na ho. Now you can drive and you can listen to music also and drive. It doesn't really bother. Something like that.
But जैसे mindfulness रखने में, equanimity रखने में भी आपका strengthen हो सकती है.
If you are doing it, if you are trying to do it as a matter of doing, as a matter of doing. And this chapter is pointed it out. Mindfulness exercise itself, the whole practice of mindfulness can strengthen us. But then it has to be done in the beginning to be able to use this to give up next. Because otherwise you will not be able to see through the emptiness of the arising emotions. Emotions will overwhelm you so much that you can't see through them.
When you are trying to be mindful, you have to be mindful.
It's an inherent paradox. An inherent paradox in the whole thing.
This is a question from Sudhakar. It happened in the past for several years. The sensations would become so strong that I can't think of code or coding. Whenever I do something else, the sensations would subside. The struggle lasted for several years. Why is this? Aversion to work?
You see, I don't know, that he has to find out. So Sudhakar has to find out, isn't it? What is the reason?
Or is this the case of secondary intention driving the work?
But again, he has to find out. See, it so happens that yes, when you are engaged in, and if you do meditation intensely, you naturally become aware of sensations. But then you abide in them. You don't take them. It is an aversion to sensations which is preventing you from working. Otherwise, there is no reason. Sensations are there, it's all right. Work is being done. Of course, if they become too strong and dominant, and it can create. I remember after one of my long courses had come, and this solar plexus would get energized. Even if I concentrate for a minute or a few seconds, so I'm teaching in a class, and then I have to concentrate obviously. If I have to write something on the board, I have to concentrate. The whole body will get charged and there will be vibrations in the body. So it did disturb to some extent. But then, since the class had to be taught, there was no way I would get out of it. So I got, it also became a part of the whole fun which was going on there. ऐसा भी हो जाता है. It's all right. So once we take it in the stride, then it shouldn't really obstruct the work. Unless there is an aversion either to work or to sensation. Because this coding work, as I remember my nephews and other people telling, becomes monotonous and boring and all that. So, yes, it is. It depends on what attitude you work on. It's really depends on that. You can take it as a challenge and doing a great job, why not? So it's not, that's what is important. How you do the job is important, not what job you do. What job you do is not really significant. Unless you are, of course, as long as it is not clashing with your personal values, not doing a mafia job or something of that kind, then obviously there is no issue at all. It's how we do the job. There are so many things which really need product, even know.
Silesh has a question, sir. If one becomes mindful, that means there is no I. So why efforting to be mindful is an issue?
One is aware. There's a difference in moving from mindfulness to awareness. One is to move in that direction. Mindfulness to self-awareness. So when one is mindful, if there is a one who is mindful, then there is
an I.
There is an I in it. So it's all right. You become aware there is an I. You don't have to despise that also. That is the reality.
There is another I that is despising it.
Yeah, there is a state and that we are aware of. It's okay. What he is pointing out is spontaneity and the actions which emerge from clear mind or presence, what you refer to it, without the notion of doership. Actions done without the notion of doership. Spontaneity.
So one of the things that, the question of you don't try to be spontaneous or you don't try to be equanimous. So one of the things that I sort of used to understand earlier was, if you put yourself in situations where, for example, if you are in mountains looking at sunrise, or you are listening to absolutely great music, then it helps in, these are also sort of...
These are methods of overcoming the strong impact of surroundings on us and impact of our own mind. Because the hills and mountains and clouds and nature has a tendency of silencing the mind. You don't usually, one is not so stupid as to hold on to a mountain or want that a cloud should remain in this very form and not change now. Or that the bird, I was just yesterday watching the birds, If you see when there is a wind and the birds are floating around, what are they doing? Just going round and round and round and round, enjoying themselves. They're just being. There's no doing. They're not wanting to go anywhere. There's nothing to do. It's such a delight to see them. They're doing opera. This kind of a vortex was created and the whole city of birds were slowly going around. I mean, I don't think they were even putting effort. I think the wind was there and it was just floating on the wind and without any flapping of a wing, they were just floating and enjoying themselves. Complete effortlessness. What?
So we'll disconnect the video if somebody wants to.
I'll tell the question, you can note it.
We'll keep the audio on. If somebody wants to hear to sip something.
You bandwidth को invest
वीडियो में दिखाया नहीं हुआ
ऑडियो में भी क्या सुना
ऐसे तो हम बातें कर रहे हैं
Thank you for the contact.
Oh, the Spanish teacher?
It helps teach children.
It's a now children still used to talk things. Correct. So it's like there is some concept where they invite some teachers to come to the school and demonstrate how in real life those languages are used. So Damya was telling me she was asked to come over coincidentally to his class. Yeah. So it must be reasonably okay if she was asked to come to the school. That means she at least knows the language.
She was quite effective. My son is to extent.
They covered the syllabus. Yes, that's what I've seen. My sense is it's got less to do with her effectiveness. It has got to do with, in my opinion, fairly low standards of what they cover in Spanish. I mean, if it can be covered, the whole session can be covered in 3 classes, I have doubts on how well they learn.
How many normal and how many green? You have the option of green tea.
Whatever.
Whatever matters for green.
डूइंग कोई नहीं कर रहा था, तो बीइंग हो रहे हैं।
जो भी बन जाए
आपको किसी पसंद नहीं तो किसी बना रहे हैं। जब बीन तो आपने पता चला आपका आय कहते हमारा आय कुछ नहीं कहता।
सर रमन के फरमाइश है कि कोरिया वाली चाय खत्म हो गई। रमन पूछ रहे कोरिया वाली चाय खत्म हो गई क्या?
इसमें कोई डाउट नहीं है।
Very different, very sweet taste also.
सडनली सबका जो है अब वो आएगा गोटा
पिछली बार से याद है कि काफी अच्छी विदाउट
लिपिड प्रिपेयर करवाना है या कौन सा कराना है?
मुझे सब कुछ कराना है, फ्रैगल्स कराना है,
अच्छा।
कराना है, क्योंकि कराना है
वो they will obviously not say it because it can be misused. मतलब लोगों को समझ नहीं आएगा, कुछ भी खा पी के आ जाएंगे। मुझे नहीं लगता कि अगर आप हर्बल टी पी के जाओगे विदाउट मिल्क तो उसके से आपके ट्राइग्लिसराइड लेवल पे कोई भी फर्क पड़ सकता है। हाँ, ये क्या रूटीन हम चेकअप हो रहा है या
रूटीन
ट्रिगर है?
नहीं, जब भी मेरा जब भी चेकअप वो होता है, अपॉइंटमेंट होती है 6 मंथ से पहले, वो कहता है कि रिपोर्ट क्या
वो वाला पसंद तो मेरा आउट की ले भी ले रखी है हॉस्पिटल वाले की, उसका वो जो है वो नहीं वो भी उसी टाइम में करना वो आपका श्रिया आपने दे दिया
नहीं। आप कितने कंफर्म बताए हैं कि तो फाइनली क्या है आपका?
परमिशन ले लिया आपके पास?
बताओ ना फिर। आज मैं सोच रहा हूँ मैं रिस्पॉन्ड कर रहा हूँ एटलीस्ट नहीं करती हूँ तो करिए नहीं अगले हफ्ते मंडे ट्यूजडे
उससे अगले हफ्ते जाना है आपको
21-22 नेक्स्ट मंडे ट्यूजडे।
अच्छा अभी भी
बता देना फिर आपका।
मैं डाउटफुल हो रहा हूँ क्योंकि मुझे आई रियलाइज कि नहीं आना कभी उसी दिन ट्यूजडे को है शायद।
और आप तो डिपेंडेंट ट्यूजडे को
ट्यूजडे का तो इनका भी डाउटफुल है, इनका मंडे का है।
मंडे को देखो क्या होगा, पैसे लग जाएंगे, क्या हो गया, एक दिन तो देखा है। हम तो बैंगलोर जाने को तैयार थे उसको देखने सुनने के। मतलब कहने का मतलब ये है कि सुना है
उसकी जगह पता मिलती भी कई महीनों में एक बार है ना, तो आई डोंट वांट टू चेंज इट।
चाहोगे नहीं सोचोगे, देखेंगे रन टाइम पे देखेंगे डूइंग क्या करेंगे तब सोचेंगे। मतलब मुझे लग रहा है कि मैं देखो रिप्लाई तो मैं उसको कर दूंगा, राइट।
यहाँ से क्वेश्चन अभी भी आते जा रहे हैं।
Sir said checking your level of equanimity means I is present. So from practical standpoint, it is possible to ensure. This is very.
मैं भी तो ये कहता हूँ कि ये बड़ा चैलेंज है इसको कहना कि आप सीरियस रहो या बनो, बट आई थिंक वही है कि डोंट वरी अबाउट प्रोग्रेस।
But sir आएंगे ना तो एक बार क्वेश्चन को बताएंगे।
या ऐसे
But then, I think the paradox वाली चीजें जो होती है ना उनके आंसर निकालने के लिए। For example, you picked up a very nice question. How do you become spontaneous? You cannot try to become spontaneous. You can only make an intention to be spontaneous and just have faith that you will be spontaneous when the moment arises.
उन्होंने आंसर दिया था सर ने इसका, इसे ड्राइव करते हुए स्पॉन्टेनियस होने के लिए आपको स्पॉन्टेनियस होने की प्रैक्टिस नहीं करनी है, आपको ड्राइविंग की प्रैक्टिस करनी है। तो स्पॉन्टेनिटी एज अ साइड इफेक्ट आएगी। सो ये चीजें साइड इफेक्ट से आती हैं, डायरेक्ट प्रैक्टिस उससे नहीं आएंगी। सो इफ यू आर practicing awareness and whatever देन ये वाली जो चीज है ये अपने आप ऐसा साइड इफेक्ट आनी चाहिए. यू कांट सीक इट ऑन इट्स ओन. शायद वही आंसर है मुझे लगता है जो समझ आया.
बट जो ट्रैप मुझे लगता है जहाँ पर हम फंसते हैं, स्पेशली जो बहुत ज्यादा मेडिटेशन करते हैं, वी ट्रीट प्रैक्टिस एंड ब्रिंग इट एज इट इज इनटू द डेली लाइफ. जो आप प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हो, जो आप एक इंटेंशनल एफर्ट टू बी माइंडफुल कर रहे हो, उसको अगर आप एज इट इज अपने डेली लाइफ में ले आते हो, तो यू एक्चुअली ट्राई टू बी स्पॉन्टेनियस इन डेली लाइफ. No, we would say that if you become, if you make yourself more sensitive by practicing meditation, right? And if in the day-to-day life you feel some unease and then sensations arise and you become aware of the sensation, then you suddenly cut yourself off from the surroundings, focus on your sensations and try to call them anicca.
External kind of बाहर से आकर supply हो रही है, rather than coming from within. But then, what's the other way? Like, is that?
आवाज सुनने को सकते हैं.
Yes, sir. Sir, I will not have anything.
पानी वाली है यार.
Yes, sir. I have to go empty stomach. Sir, वो मेरे regular test होते हैं sir. So I have, I told you that is ना, मेरी जब भी appointment होती है with my rheumatologist, I have to get all my tests done. Yes. नहीं सर, इट्स अंडर कंट्रोल. जॉइंट्स में.
तो शांति है तो लेंगे. This chai without sugar, इससे पहले इसमें काट रहे हैं, इंटेस्टाइन से कवर कर रहे हैं. Let's go ahead and leave what you want. Then it is like chai without sugar, it gives the caffeine kick.
So this session without the video is like chai without sugar.
नहीं, chai without sugar is very nice. मैं तो हमेशा वही लेता.
जब कहना बनाया मैंने तो पैरेंट्स हो रहे हैं.
आपका तो प्रश्न नहीं है, आप लीजिए.
फिर अपन भी होस्ट
मेरे हिडन एजेंडा कोई और नहीं लेगा तो मैं कैसे लूँगा.
आज मिस कर रहा हूँ मैं. ये वही नहीं बोले वाली कि आई जाग रहा है उसमें वो ट्रुथ
जेल में डाल के ले जाओ. वैसे ही ब्लड निकले बाद में ये अच्छी है. You should consider taking one or two.
तो लिमिट बताइए लाभ वाले करेंगे. He is very irritated. She thinks that he is trying to escape the work of. She said,
this is very nice.
No,
I was
is the best.
saying that I am missing these Korean cookies. ना अंदर से
चाय
तो पूरा साउंड कुछ कम आ रहा
ये तो पानी है. Exactly. That is her definition. That is her interpretation.
अच्छा
मैं गरम पानी पिला देता हूँ. Last time before.
उनका concept चाय का वो standard tea, milk and all.
Aroma is the word.
Aroma बहुत
Aroma बहुत अच्छा है.
So there's a question from Suresh. That sir said checking your level of equanimity means I is present. So from practical standpoint, it is possible to ensure progress is happening.
Yeah, that is okay. To that extent it is fine. That's why I said in the horizontal domain it is fine. But here, if you are concerned about it, then there is some issue. So as we practice more and come to peace, then these things should not carry more importance. Because then you see that every state of mind is empty. You know, the state of mind has no substantiality. So if you see that, as he has beautifully put in that, the feeling that my mind is impure is also a feeling. Let go. But very risky thing to see. Be seen in the proper light. Misinterpret करेंगे तो कोई भी नहीं.
So I was mentioning to Raman on your example of spontaneity in driving that I felt that the meditations that we do it's like the practice, but we mistakenly take it to our daily life and choose it as a escape. For example, if we start to have suffering, have stress, we suddenly cut ourselves off and we get into this mode of doing that.
See, as a
concentration of
firefighting, it is good. No? It's not so strong and so clear. This is also state of mind. If you want to get out of it quickly, विवाह करना है ना, विवाह करना. You want to get out of suffering quickly. So that equilibrium takes time to come. Versus staying with the discomfort. That's why you'll find many of these Advaita phases, they are very foul mouthed, they'll speak anything. And so you're not able to figure out if he is really an enlightened person or is on crazy.
Yes. You discussed with exactly same thing in the other day, sir. People are sometimes called mad.
Essentially,
Why is it happening? Why did Buddha not do it? Because they missed out on the preliminary part of practice.
That's what say that again.
Because they missed out on the preliminary part of the practice. Practice of mindfulness, practice of Shila, practice of Samadhi, they missed it all. One has got mutated into it. I am talking of the people who are really enlightened and of that kind. So they have become understood things so deeply and clearly because of insight, while the mind is still not in that state of, it has not been still purified of the sankharas of various kinds. So you find the speech coming out in a manner which will not sound very pleasant, but it is coming out from no self.
So it can be compatible.
This is the most charitable explanation I can give. आप समझे नहीं. I think you took it the other way around. You know, when I studied, for example, a great person like Mr. Datta Maharaj, I studied his book and I've listened to his tapes, some of them are available. You find him speaking in a very, very rough manner. So you could explain it in, so that's what I'm saying. I don't mean it as just a joke. I mean seriously.
it feels like kind of duality.
So, because he's generally recognized to be an enlightened master. You may forget about first stage, second stage and all that. He's generally seen to have abiding in it. He used to sell BDs as a livelihood, which will not be seen as a right livelihood in the traditional sense. So, that's why I said, when I see him and accept that he is an enlightened person, this is what I understand. That's why I'm.
So, Professor, conceptually, the presence of sankharas is compatible with insights.
The presence of residual sankharas which will end in this very lifetime.
The other approach
If the sankhara is not there,
वो तो वैसे ही हो गया.
the person, what will he do? How will the consciousness arise?
So there is the other thing also that you mentioned sometimes that it's the sankharas not in the sense of the defilements, but the natural tendencies of the person.
Habit patterns.
They will remain there because all enlightened persons are very different.
Sankharas are of two kinds. One is which has a very strong nature, which will give rise to rebirth. Others which will not. Buddha lived for how many? 45 years after his enlightenment. So he didn't sit peacefully and work, don't bother about the whole world. It was night and day. What could be the motivation? Your mind gave motivation to work. That's the sankhara of that, which is operating. And if you study the lives of various disciples, great disciples, I'm so much different from them. So why should there be? They're not all stamped into फैक्ट्री में enlightenment की स्टैम्प लग जो सारे एक ही जैसे प्रोडक्ट हैं, लग सोचिएगा एक जैसे ये सारे. Huge variation. Even between two chief disciples, there is such a huge variation. Mahamoggallana and Sariputta, huge variation in their day-to-day interactions, in their power, ability. See, power of the mind, for example. Sariputta never displayed any power of the mind. Very rarely, at least I have not heard till now. But जितने मैंने अभी तक डिस्कोर्स पढ़े हैं जिसमें उन्होंने कोई अपनी psychic powers दिखाई. Mahamoggallana is shown doing again and again doing it for good. He would go to, at least the story says, he would go to Devloka, वहाँ पे वो king of the devas थे, बैठे हुए थे, वो enjoy कर रहे थे. So उन्होंने, he sat and meditated and put his thumb of the foot on his palace and started shaking. क्या हो गया? कौन आ गया भाई? यहाँ पे क्या हो गया? Then they saw that this monk is standing there and he is putting his hand. So they realized he कुछ गड़बड़ है. Came out and then he tells him, कहाँ फंसे हो? क्या कर रहे हो? So he uses this as a method to awaken him up. But Sariputta never does this.
So the other approach says that these are the test cases of saying who is enlightened, and so you question the enlightenment of people whose minds seem to be.
We don't know. How can I say? How can I have
That's
it?
my question.
How can I have the temerity
But you
to
said
say?
once I believe that he is an enlightened master, then I have to accept that this. So there is an if then. There is no.
I don't have any way of saying that. I can't say that for sure that he is enlightened. How
Then
can I
why
say
believe?
that? I can't, no, because there is evidence, empirical evidence of so many people. I can't decide. I am interconnected with them. I can't decide कि सारे पागल हैं. ऐसा कैसे कर सकता हूँ? Those who have actually lived with him, there is the evidence of people who have actually met him, including this gentleman has met him, and there are so many others who have met him. His disciples who have met him and who describe his life and the way he lived. It seems he must have been a very evolved person. There is no doubt about it. On the other hand, he also takes his teacher as Ramana Maharshi. He's a totally different person. I see his life. Now, how can I put a judgment on Ramana Maharshi? No basis. So I have to therefore use the statement here to be correct, precise, and I presume I have a kind of implicit belief that from his writings, from his life. After all, how do you know that there was enlightenment? How do you know?
How do you, and I know there's no precise answer, but I mean when you read these stories where so many people become Arihant, in your framework, when would you think someone is enlightened? What would be a few things you would think would make someone be considered enlightened?
I can talk about me. Others को पता ही नहीं चलता, दूसरे का behavior से देख पाना बड़ा मुश्किल हो जाता है, unless you live very closely with the person. So I think the lack of ego is the best sign in my understanding. Lack of ego is the best sign of evolution of a person. That's why I don't know, for example, Dalai Lama very personally. I met him few times. that to audience and listening, not even close interaction. But just by interaction and seeing him, you can see he was quite subsidized, drastically cut. You don't know in detail.
So that's the way, but lack of ego would also manifest behaviorally, I presume.
Yes,
Therefore, behavior of the sort that you just narrated, on which we had a good laugh. Does that not then inherently mean कि अभी बचा हुआ है काफी कुछ? नहीं?
You don't know. That's why I'm saying I can't say that they were all sammak sambuddha. I can't say that. Maybe a Shuddhapanna, if you have to believe in all that stage. One may be a Shuddhapanna or a Anagami or a Saddhagami or being an Arhant is obviously a stupendous feat. It's not a minor thing.
But there is another thing which
So whether, for example, I have very, what should I say, deeply thought and discussed with some fellow senior meditators. You can't be sure, whether even Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi was fully enlightened or partially enlightened. Who am I to tell it? How can I be sure? But reading Buddha's words, seeing the enormous sweep of his teachings, it seems you seem confident. This guy must have really something different. I mean, it's impossible for a person to see through things so clearly, see through the frailties of people, see through the variety of people. It's really great. And so when I read these discourses and I find it would appear contradiction, and then you think deeply and see, no, they're not contradictions, they're actually supplements and complements. They are ways of looking at things, and then you see your own state of mind changing with time. You realize, you see, at this time I like this, at this time I like this, now I like something else. Obviously, I needed different teachings at different times. That kind of wide sweep and huge ability, I haven't seen anybody. At least in all of the teachers, I have not seen. Maybe there is somebody, I don't know. In all the teachers that I have either personally met, some I have personally met and have interacted closely with them also, or those whom I have read about, I haven't seen such a sweep. Nobody. Historically, nobody has seen comparable to Buddha.
But does history also have to play a role for the kind of society we change, the factors of the society, or that does it have a relationship with enlightenment?
I mean, not really enlightenment of a person. It depends on his own past works and past abilities and the effort which he is putting into. It's not, I don't think it depends. It's not that when Buddha was born, the society was peaceful and tranquil. It was divided into small hamlets, and each hamlet leader would be a king and chieftain, and there would be Suddhodana wasn't a big king of India. Small kingdom. Kapilavastu must be on the side of not even Noida, I think. He must be smaller than that.
Poisoning and killing.
Yeah. All these things. See, Ajatashatru killing his father, getting his father killed, and Ashoka killing his all brothers. You can see all that happening.
because of eras की हम बात करते थे.
Yeah. We talk of that as an actual age. That age, not because of one person, because all across the world something happened. You had Lao Tse in China, you had Socrates in Athens, and you had Buddha here. All were around the same time, 500, 600 BC. So something is happening. So that's why it sounds mysterious. So it's better left to the mystery.
About this fact of this guru is getting angry and all that, the other explanation that sort of some people give is that it's like when a mother is angry on a child, it's not always that she's angry, she's showing anger. That also is a traditional explanation.
It may be true.
It may be sort of.
It may be true, yeah. We don't know. But apparently many people do actions which are not even within the domain of moral precepts. So when you hear about Osho's life, for example, you can't put it along in any way. You can't put it in any explanation whatsoever.